US Xpress has been officially acquired by Knight-Swift as of June 29th for $808 million, and they got it for a steal. And for all you worried about Swift and maybe their dangerous drivers, they've just grown by 30%. So on the bright side, we're going to get at least 30% more Swift memes. So first things first is, did it actually happen? So first thing you can see here, according to Webull and the stock exchange, that US Xpress has been delisted, which means it's no longer on the US stock exchange. The next piece of evidence here is the 8K form. So this is a form, basically the votes and the submission for the US Xpress to be acquired by Knight-Swift. You can see some of the details. Then you can also see the vote information. So as you can see, they were acquired. So what does Knight-Swift get? So what they get is $2.2 billion of revenue. They get 7,200 trucks, and they also get 14,400 trailers. So now Swift will have almost $10 billion a year in revenue, 25,000 trucks, and 93,000 trailers. Now here's why I think $808 million is a steal for that company. So if you know anything about purchasing equipment, you'll know that these are somewhat conservative values, especially with US Xpress, which has very new and up-to-date equipment here, right? So 7,200 trucks at an average value of $80,000 per truck comes out to about $500 million, as well as 14,400 trailers at $40,000 each comes out to about $500 million, totaling at $1.15 billion worth of just equipment. So this is interesting because Knight-Swift gets all this equipment for $800 million, so they save $300 million on the equipment, and they get the whole company also. So it's literally cheaper for them to buy this company than to buy all the equipment on its own. And they get all the revenue, and they get all the customers. So why did they sell? Why would US Xpress sell for such a cheap price, even though $808 million does not seem like a cheap price? So I want to pull up the financials here for US Xpress to see what was actually going on. So you can see between 2022 and 2019, their fiscal year, all of their P&L, it's all public because they're a publicly traded company. So let's just look at 2022. So they did $2.16 billion in revenue. Then you have all their expenses in here. And you could see in here their net income for 2022 was negative $44 million. So to put it lightly, US Xpress was essentially a dumpster fire financially. Now you can compare this to Knight-Swift that did $7.4 billion in revenue and did $771 million of net income after taxes. So if you're one of the smaller guys out there thinking that the mega companies are all just crushing it, they're also struggling too, at least some of them. You can see here, losing $44 million in a year. I mean, they're losing about $1 million every single week. So when you're losing money at that type of rate, that's why you would sell the company at less than asset value. Now, on some deeper analysis, I think that Knight-Swift could probably make about $3 billion on this transaction in about 2 to 3 years in terms of value generation. So remember, Swift here does $7.4 billion a year in revenue. And on that 7.4, they do about $771 million of net income. So their efficiency on a truckload basis is about a 11% net profit on revenue. If they can apply this to the $2.2 billion of revenue that they're bringing in from US Xpress, then on that $2.2 billion, they could potentially generate another $210 million a year of net income. If they apply the Knight-Swift principles, which they claim they are, into the US Xpress model. Now, if we go in here to Knight-Swift stats, we can see that their price to earnings ratio is about a 13.59. So this means for every additional dollar of profit that they generate, they create an additional $13.50 of equity value in the company. You can also see here that their price to earnings ratio is forecasted to be even higher in the future at 17.4. So as you can see here, if they could turn it into that $200 million of profit and they hit their expected price to earnings ratio, then through this acquisition, they're going to create $3.4 billion of additional value in the stock. Yeah, and then actually also, if you add the additional equipment value that they're getting, then the total all value of this acquisition would be $4.5 billion for a $808 million purchase. So I put all this together also to kind of show what I think is going to happen to US Xpress following this acquisition. I think that they're going to slaughter cost, they're going to slaughter employees, and they're going to just reduce the hell out of cost. One is because they're currently a dumpster fire, burning $45 million a year. And two is that they stand to gain $3.5 billion from improving the profit of the company. So there's basically all the incentive in the world to get rid of whatever way that US Xpress is operating and implement whichever way that Swift Knight is operating. So if you're working there and you're kind of worried about what will happen, the dollars are pointing to an exact mirror of what's going on at Knight-Swift and potentially losing tons of higher up jobs within US Express. I mean, we can make jokes all day long about how horrible the drivers are at Swift or how terrible their operations are, but in reality, I'm not entirely certain how happy their customers are, but their shareholders are extremely happy. I mean, making 11% net profit on trucking is extremely good. Making $700 million a year in profit is really, really good. Losing $45 million a year is very bad. So I think in that difference, there's going to be a ton of change for all the people that are currently working at US Express. When Knight-Swift is going to its shareholders and going to the banks saying that they're going to acquire US Express, a company that's losing $45 million a year, you better believe that in order to instill confidence in the people they're working with, their whole sales pitch to them was probably, oh, we'll get rid of so many costs, we'll get rid of this, we'll get rid of that, we'll get rid of this, we'll pay drivers this. Otherwise, why would a bank want to finance an asset that's losing $45 million a year? So in my opinion also, I think this is going to continue with other companies like TQL, I think, or larger brokerages should actually, in my opinion, purchase trucking companies because you will get all of their customers at less than asset value. I think if a company like TQL purchased a company, let's say on a much smaller scale, like 100 trucks or 200 trucks, you could just purchase them at less than asset value, get all of their customers, sell the trucks, and then make a massive amount of profit on the acquisition. Especially a lot of these companies too that have like 50 to 100 to 200 trucks, a lot of them just want to be finished. They just want to be done with being in the industry. And right now, if you have cash, I just think that makes a ton of sense. So because it makes a ton of sense, I think it will happen more often, and I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Like, let's say you're a company like Schneider, like Cowan, like TQL. You purchase a 200 truck company that does $50 million a year of revenue. You then sell 80% of the trucks, you keep 20%, and then you just broker out the other 80% of work. And if you bought this 200 truck company, the chances are it's probably worth right now $20 million. You could take that 40 million, make 20% on it. Let's say you make 20% on 40 million as brokering the workout. That's 8 million of profit. So you take the 8 million of profit, you multiply that out by 14. Now you've created $110 million of value out of a $20 million investment that is really just a loan, and you get all the assets. So I think because this makes so much sense, it makes so much sense for the larger companies to purchase the smaller companies, even if the business is not that good, because you could just basically get rid of a lot of the staff, get rid of all the trucks, broker out most of the work to owner-operators, and make a 5x return in like 2 to 3 years. So because I think that makes so much sense, I think it will happen more and more and more. Maybe not always at the scale of the US Express, but on the scale of, I think it would make a lot of sense for the 100 to 200 to 300 truck companies to get gobbled up more often by these mega companies. So I think the massive companies are going to get even larger, and I think that there's going to be even more owner-operators while the middle portion of the 10 to 300 truck company starts to dissolve. But yeah, that's my opinion on the situation of everything that happened, why it happened, how it happened, and what I think is going to continue to happen in the future based upon the numbers. So thank you so much for listening. If you have anything that you think I got wrong in here or any critiques of my analysis here, please leave a comment below. Thank you so much for listening, and like and subscribe.